Art or Release by Samilia. Creative, yet this artist writes only what she screams and no one hears. Real, only my mind would write what I don't know. Expression, like a model is to fashion, my words express my whole. Art, call it what you want. Authenticity speaks louder as words from my past bruises bleed through. Talented, only if the words I write express what we're too afraid to speak. Escape, forever you remain. Second only to the one who freed me. Some call it art, some call it release. Breathing is what it means to me. When we're stressed or sick of life, most of us try and find ways to cope, either through having fun with our friends, trying smoking, or whatever. But I'm here to tell you that poetry is one of the ways you can cope about the stresses of life. In this speech, I hope to inform you of what poetry is, what poetry includes, like techniques, and also the benefits of poetry on mental health. I have written poetry for about 6 years and have struggled with mental health, so I know the benefits that poetry has on those topics. I have also took the liberty of reviewing peer-reviewed journals and research about the effects of poetry on mental health. We've talked about poetry in school, but in case you forgot, Alyssa Davis describes poetry as a form of an expression that uses rhythm, metaphors, and other elements to create a visual for others that isn't original, that uses imagination or whatever you would like to call it. Poetry also includes 3 things: structure, rhythm, and rhyme, but not all poems include this. There are different forms of poetry, and there are many more than just on this paper. Sonnets, haiku, free verse, blank verse, limerick, ode, acrostic, and elegy. But today I will be only describing 4. A haiku is a 3-line poem with 5 to 7 to 5 syllable patterns. A free verse is basically what I write. It's a poetry without rhyme scheme or meter. A ode is addressed to a particular subject, like a pencil. I would write about the motions of a pencil and what it does for me. And an acrostic poem is where you spell out a word vertically using letters. A great example of a acrostic poem would be the poem that I wrote for the hook. It spells out creates, which I am a creator, so I created that poem. Now that you know what poetry is, let's discuss how it works. You know that poetry, or some poetry, have structure, rhythm, and rhyme, but all poems have techniques that they use. Some of those techniques may include imagery, metaphors, similes, personification, and or rhyme. These poets use these techniques to express emotion in a vivid and relatable way. Here's an example of how a poet could do that. They turn regular statements into poetry in a visual way. The statement, "I miss when we were young," can turn into, "A day older, yet our past still clings to me like a child to their parent. Like a parent, I watch myself grow, unready to let go of the childhood of a child who is no longer." The whole of this poem is a metaphor for missing being a child, for wanting to stay a child, for missing the nostalgia of being a child and wanting to stay there. Some imagery may be clings to me like a child because a child to a parent clings and holds on for dear life. Not for dear life. That's anyway. But they would like to stay close to their comfort. And another one would be, I watch myself grow because I'm seeing myself become someone that I'm not ready to be. That is an example of how poets may use some techniques to portray an image for their audience. Now that you know about how poetry works or the techniques used in poetry, let's discuss some of the benefits that poetry brings to our mental health. Reading and writing poetry allows us to process emotions and find comfort in communities. It helps us to grow communities with other people that may write poetry too. And just, yeah. Poetry also helps improve emotional control and self-awareness. As I said in my poem, sometimes we write words that we are not even sure of why we wrote it or what we wrote it for. It is a self-reflection. It allows us to whoa, that's what I really feel deep inside. According to Wei-Jing Zhang, poetry reduces stress, builds empathy, and self-esteem. I am a living testimony of that. Reading and sharing poetry reduces anxiety, loneliness, and builds social connection. As I've said before, it does do those things. According to Chris Burkle, poetry improves mental health and emotional well-being. Chris Burkle is from the study of Nottingham Trent University, and he did this research, and I decided to draw a graph of this research that supports that reading and writing poetry can benefit you. In this research, he found out that reading and writing poetry helped 51% of individuals with loneliness and isolation. It helped 50% of individuals with anxiety and depression. Did I say that? 51 loneliness and isolation? Yes, I did. And it helped 34% of those feel less anxious, 24% better able to handle their problems, 17% help with grief, bereavement, and 16.7% helped with ongoing mental health symptoms. This proves that mental health issues can be improved by reading and or writing poetry. I hope in this you learned about the benefits of poetry, what poetry is, and how to create or the things that go into poetry. I hope the next time you're grieving or need something to cope that you look towards poetry to do so. Bye.